David, how's it going today, my friend?
It's going well actually. Things kind of booted up last year at NAM or last week at NAM rather. So I feel like everybody's finally dusting off the new year and getting back to work and things are going now.
You are so freaking busy. I mean, I know we have about a half hour, to discuss today. I could probably talk to you for about 2 or 3 hours. I mean, you got so much going on. And right from the jump, I want to start off by talking about the latest release that you have with Chips Enough and a couple others. Your own version of Donnie Iris's Ah Leah. When I saw that come through, I had to reach out. I said, I got to talk to this guy about this song because, I mean, I'm 58, so I was around in the MTV generation. It's one of those songs that's just a
Right.
crazy cool song. And yeah, it's cool to hear that you guys picked that one up.
Yeah, well, I kind of got back into this mindset. Albums take a long time to make. They take about a year. By the time you sort of conceptualize it, you get together, you write the material, you record it, mix it, package it, or the record label packages it, puts it out, So it's about a year, to do it. And
Sure.
I've got some things, that are in the pipeline that you'll be hearing about here shortly. But in the meantime, I did a couple things. I put out Metal Gods with James Durbin on it. The Judas Priest cover to announce my Bass Warrior tour that's coming up here in
Mhm.
March. And I'd been wanting to, around the same time, I was thinking about just some cool songs from growing up, like
Oh, okay.
what are, and that Donnie Iris song was one of them, it was just one of those just great songs. And, not, like Aldo Nova was super popular.
Yep.
Joe Jackson, the Cars, there was a lot of these other groups that really, got the big success. And Donnie, as far as I know, kind of had that one song that was the big hit, and it was just this cool ethereal guitar track, So I just thought of, and the vocals are awesome on it. So I rang Drew Fortier, from the Lucid, and so he just said, "Dude, let's get Chip on." And I thought, "Fuck, that's a great idea because Chip's good with all that layering and harmony."
Oh, it's amazing, and it's funny because like I mentioned before we started, I know the guitar part. Everybody knows that power chord. That's like
Right.
the birth of power chords. But since David Ellefson's doing it, my ear tuned in more to the bass, and I had
Right.
forgotten about the little part right before the verse kicks in. It's like like you
Yeah.
forget about that because you're so focused on that hard power chord.
Well, and there are these cool, these pentatonic. I always keep a bass here, So it's just these, these cool pentatonic, and it's just,
Yeah.
you're just kind of walking across a pentatonic. That part you're talking about,
Yeah.
right, and into the verse. So it was fun to sit down and write the chart for it, and get it, just really fine tune it and listen to it. There's, it's a nice pattern. But it's, sometimes, yeah, you're listening to the vocals and guitars as you should, but behind it, there's all this other, really clever work, that I've learned making records over the years that, every part, every note on a recording matters,
Right.
and they're
Right.
not there by mistake. And whoever is engineering, producing, they're going to catch mistakes. They're going to want to fix things if they're not right. You know what I mean? So to me, every note that's on an album is there for a reason. And even if, like, the Ramones, sometimes Marty and I would always talk about how, there'd be mistakes, Dee Dee or somebody would make a mistake, or Tommy on the drums, and you just kind of have to assume, well, they left it there for a reason. It
Sure.
was meant to just, well, fuck it, it's punk rock. Let's just leave it.
But each like you said, each note, each tone, each instrument plays off each other. So,
Yeah.
and most of the time, I guess historically, bass is kind of the underlayer, and it doesn't stand out as aggressively as a guitar, and it's supposed to bring in those low tones. When you're doing like a new project or a new, I know some artists pick you to lay down bass tracks. How do you approach the bass when you're writing a new song?
Well, back to your previous comment, the bass is kind of in the background or the undertow. It depends on who's playing it. You know what I mean? So I think
David, you are
when
correct.
people, when people call me, um, they know I'm going to push the bass up front, and it's not a volume thing; it's a performance thing. It's how you play the part. It's in the conviction of the part, and that's just how I've always been. I've never been a bass player to stand in the back and just sort of go along to get along. I've always been up on the front line where the guitars and the singer and everything are.
Sure, sure.
And I think it's my personality, and that comes through in how I play the bass. And so the bass is, of course, this fundamental instrument in the sort of hierarchy of a track of a song. But to me, it can also lead the charge, and you're essentially defining the chord changes by which the singer, is going to sing his melodies from over top. And so there's a lot that can be done with the bass. And I like these records. I don't know, like with Leah, for instance, if they cut that in the room together, I assume it was probably overdubs. Maybe they cut bass and drums together. Lots of times it was dependent on the budget.
Sure.
But oftentimes too, it's about the vibe. Like what was the vibe? In the session. It's we get into this thing. I think for me too, 80s, 90s, where we were always making these records where everything was segregated, where you lay down the drums and then there's a scratch guitar, and then you put the bass, and then you replace the guitar and all this stuff. And, I always it's always more fun to play to live musicians whenever possible,
Right.
and understanding that with that comes the separation issue of, microphones hear everything. So, what's the best way to have really good clarity and separation with with all the instruments. And that's why you overdub things individually, is to have the most pure isolated sounds. But in the attempt of having purity and isolation, you can also lose the vibe and the connectivity. Max Norman always called it musical conversation. When you're in the room, you're having musical conversation. You can kind of feel when the drummer's leading up to the end of a part, and he's going to put in a fill to transition to the next part. Lots of times it's guitar players will chunk a little louder and open up the muting a little more to kind of give the attention that, hey, we're going to make a turn here. Same with bass, sometimes bass and drums and gun do 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 do. There's that's musical conversation. Those are some things that you play off of each other. We always do it live, of course, but in the studio, I think you're always trying to get not just the perfect recording, but the perfect recording that still has some humanity to it. That still has some human emotion into it.
Right, right. And on this track, Chip is just, I mean, he's been performing with Enough's Enough for freaking 30 years now, and his voice, it's so impressive how he can still just nail it.
Yeah.
He's one that's not discussed a lot, and I think that's a shame because he's tremendous vocalist.
I agree. I mean, I think there's two guys. There's him and Todd Kearns, who's probably most known for playing bass with Slash. But I had him during the pandemic, when we did the Ellefson No Cover record, I had him come in, and he sang we did a cover of the Sweet song, Sweet F.A. And man, he just fucking knocked it. And also Bumblefoot. Those are the three guys. Bumble's another one of those guys, man. Like, if we did Sheer Heart Attack by Queen on the No Cover album. He had Doro on there, and then Bumble can hit all those high harmonies, the Roger Taylor, really high parts, and he can really layer that stuff up and make it super slick. So there's a handful of guys that you call for that stuff, and I think those are the three. And in this case too, we brought Stephen Chiro in, from Kick Tracy, and he added some nice, really the wailing high parts at the end, as well as, he had he tried to change the timbre a little bit, you know what I mean? So, Chip has this beautiful, dreamy sound to his voice, and you can hear the harmony so well. Stephen, I think, gave a little, punch to that by blending his voice in there as well.
It's just tremendous. And, hearing it got me thinking about back then with the MTV generation. And I feel bad for people who did not grow up with that because there was so much. I mean, the memories of coming home after school, popping on MTV, staying up late on the weekends to listen to Headbangers Ball. Yeah, give me some of your memories about the good old MTV days.
Well, look, as it's interesting when you read books about it now. I was reading Alex Van Halen's book, and you hear other people weigh in about MTV and what it did, and those of us that enjoyed the success from it. A lot of what you see hanging on my wall was the success that was either springboarded or directly from getting plays on MTV.
Sure.
So I'm not a guy who hated MTV. Of course, they used the Peace Cells bass line as its theme song there for a lot of years, which honestly I did not hear that much because we were on tour the whole time, so I missed most of
Oh,
it. But
shit.
from what people tell me, it was on there a lot. So I'm not an MTV hater. I'm a guy that I got the nice upswing, from
Right.
MTV. But I think it's look, it created, it forced people to have more of a visual connection to their songs, to their lyrics, to their music. You know, I like the adage that no one ever says, "Hey, let's go hear this band." They always go, "Hey, let's go see a band,"
That's
right?
true. That is
You
true.
know, "Hey, my friend's band is playing tonight. You want to go down and check them out? You want to go see them?" People listen with their eyes. They just do, and in person, when someone walks in the room, there's no there, why that's why we say first impressions are lasting impressions. How you walk in the room to a job interview, to walking on a gig, how you appear on stage for your audience. It's those first initial reactions, that often set the tone for what the rest of the event is going to be like.
Right.
So we just do, the eyes are one of the five senses. So I think if anything with MTV, it's look, to some degree it was kind of like radio. There was format of style of music. And last night I was driving, listening to Sirius Radio, and I was listening to First Wave,
Okay.
and it had a
Good.
lot of the Cars and Thompson Twins, this kind
Yeah.
of stuff,
Right.
is on there, and obviously a lot of that stuff just ruled the airwaves. It was this '80s synth pop, and the early Cars stuff. I loved it, man. They had this kind of this darker, edgy '70s East Coast, punk rock vibe about it, with this real slick, clean Moog keyboard thing that
And
they had.
then I think it was Heartbreak City. I think it was called. That was the real big. And then I think they got super poppy, but the early
Yeah. And
stuff
I
was.
think that was a Mutt Lang record. He came in to produce it. And obviously, when Mutt gets in the room, things go to another level, not only success wise, but just sort of cleaning up the production, bringing out. I asked Elliot Easton that actually one day. I said, "What was it like working with Mutt?" And he said, "Mutt really tightened up my playing."
Well,
He said he got me right inside the hi hat. I was like, interesting. So I'm sure from a place of meter performances, playing everything really clean. We made a couple records with Dan Huff, and Dan worked with Mutt on those Shania Twain records. And I asked him the same thing because one day Dan was just putting me through the ringer on some part. And I said, "Dude, look, you've got real studio ears because this is all you've done." I go in between live performances and studio. And, when you've been in the studio, you realize playing live is kind of a joke because it's so
wow.
tight.
Yeah.
But it's a different musical conversation,
Yeah.
between
Yeah.
the band, the audience, and everything. Whereas in a studio, the conversation happens strictly between the musicians, to basically, print that forever, onto a recording. That's why producing is such a cool job because, to hear things, to have a vision for things, to really, get it archived, into a recording and know that, hey, once we hit send to wherever this goes, off to the mastering lab and off to the record label and whatever, it's that's what it is. It's printed like that forever.
And as one who is not a musician, and never been in the studio, I forget how important the role of the producer is because he helps the musicians just find that certain something or that certain note or that certain tone to mix it all together.
Yeah, it's, look, you're overseeing performances, you're overseeing the production of the entire product, you're also going through the songs sometimes. It's interesting in a Nashville setting where, a record label will sign an artist, they are basically the singer. They're oftentimes not the songwriter, then they go to a music publisher to go find songs for this artist to sing. And then they go in the studio with a producer that kind of pulls all that together. Let's take these songs from their demo phase. We write charts. We hire, the best musicians possible in town who, kind of are already little bands in and of themselves, you get this bass player, that guitar player, this drummer, this acoustic, this steel
Yeah,
player.
the hired guns come in. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, you kind of you then put the band together, and so there's a lot of mixing and matching, to put all these parts together, to make sure that they all play nice together, and I've always been intrigued by the Nashville number system. I thought it was so complicated, but it's not. It's just saying, look, C sharp or C, key is C major, right? There's no flats or sharps, right? So
Right, right.
if everybody has a chart and it says one, key is C, well, then C is the one, right? But
Really?
if you realize, okay, it's too low for the singer, let's move it up a step. Well, now, it's still one, but now D becomes the one, right?
Right, right.
So you're not writing notes out, you're just writing the numbers.
Oh, no way.
And then that way, it's mostly for the singers, as I understand, is that, because they'll be, have the singer as big as the star may be, they're in the room with the band, and they're kind of always, they're recording the right way. They're writing and putting things around what's best for the singer. Whereas us rocker guys, many times we'll write something in the key of A, the key of E, because that's just kind of how we write. And then we realize, oh shit, the singer in our band can't sing this stuff, well, we have to make him sing it, and I read a lot of memoirs and various things. And, you hear about, guys that like,
I was blew my voice out trying to get there or something.
well, yeah, it's like we wrote this great song. I didn't really stop to realize that, it wasn't really in the right key, and I struggled to sing it. And, I'll hear songs now because I've had a long career, and I'll hear songs, whether it's Maroon 5 or, Ariana Grande, these people that had these incredible vocal ranges. As we get older, our voices, it's a muscle, and the muscle gets tired. It needs to be worked. And I hear these songs with these outrageous vocal acrobatics, and I go, oh, little do they know at 30 they're going to be singing this shit till they're 78 years old somewhere, a cruise, a casino, something, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And so trying to,
At all. Yeah.
People sometimes ask, what would you do different now if you knew then what you know now? And
Yeah.
I think that's probably one of them, is to just sort of have things within the range. And but look, we're young, we're adventurous, like in thrash metal, we were very progressive. We really pushed the limit of some fantastic playing. And it was kind of like doing a jazz mentality within heavy metal,
Yeah.
and push the limits. And little did we know we'd be playing this stuff all these years later.
Right, right. It starts off freestyling, and then all of a sudden, then here you go.
Yeah.
Crazy. You had mentioned NAMM, and I saw some of the footage from you down there last week or week and a half, I guess. You seem like you were busy as hell. Give me a little wrap up of what all went down that week.
I'm always busy.
There's
I'm
so much
blessed.
going on.
People call me, email me, want me to be in the room with them. You know what I mean? So I've learned to say yes, get in the room. That's where the action is. It's where the fun is. I've never been good with, well, let's just sit back and wait and see. You know what I mean? It's like, where I don't know. That's just not my approach. My approach is, I don't know, let's walk in the room and see what's going on. And because look, that's where people are, and all things happen because of people. There isn't some event. There's not one thing that suddenly you've arrived. It's you arrive by taking the steps to get there. And so for me, exhibiting at NAMM is really great. The fact that they allow, I'm the only artist who's exhibiting there. We have our coffee company, of course, and that's our way in. But we partnered. We had Ride Stage Clothing. We had a Nefarious Guitars. We had the author Brad Tolinsky was in our booth with his new MC5 book. He's written one of my opinion, kind of the Van Halen Bible, which is Eruption.
Oh, that was him. Oh, no shit.
Yeah, yeah, and
Oh,
Brad
wow.
was the editor of Guitar World magazine for forever, and his wife or girlfriend runs the She Rocks organization. That's how I got invited to that, which was incredible. I mean, that was Grammy level stuff there, and it was all for the ladies. I've watched that thing start and grow over the years at NAMM, and to be invited there as a guest, and our friend Mixie from Stitched Up Heart, she was our metal rocker who got an
Such a
award.
band. They're so good.
Lindsay Sterling's just badass as hell.
Yeah.
She is so killer. I mean, there's basically three of her. There's her, and then there's the two violinists that play in the Trans-Siberian Orchestra.
Right, right.
To do that rad work with violin is so cool. And then Paula Cole, her big hit song that she has, and these speeches that these women gave were just so powerful. They were so moving. They were so heartfelt. And you realize, there's as much as us metal rocker dudes, we're all macho and, fire and smashing and take on the world and all this kind of stuff. You have to tap into, a softer side of you when you're composing, especially with lyrics. You
Yeah,
have
the
to,
humanity side, sure. Yeah.
yeah, you have to, because there's an emotional impact that songs have with people, men and women, and so it's just interesting to be around an evening of the female artists and how they kind of get their POV, their point of view of their composing and what they write about, the things around them that influenced them to write as they were telling the stories of these songs. And so that was, I just really was considered that of a blessing, so that was very cool.
I wanted to touch on the Metal Allegiance show in Anaheim, which seemed amazing, man. But before we run out of time, I do want to hit about the Bass Warriors tour coming up, and I think it starts in March throughout Europe. What are fans going to see during this show?
So look, Metal Allegiance, is this, look, we're not only these all-star concerts that we give, but just as much, we've got two full-length records out. The guys also did a little Fallen Heroes EP that I was on tour at the time. But we've got some new material that we're working on now. We've already got our sights set on January 2026.
Nice.
For the next event, and some new material coming along now, and so that's exciting. So that band is it's not just an all-star band. It's also a recording group. We call it the Core Four: me, Skolnick, Mengi, and Portnoy. We're the driving force of the creative recording side of that. So
You've learned so many amazing artists. It's just
yeah, and then and it's fun to bring in. It's great that Marty had actually joined us a few years back over at when it was held at the Grove. Jackson Guitars was a sponsor that year. Marty's band opened, and then he played. Ironically, we played a Metallica song together. That I think we jammed "Seek and Destroy" on the encore. So Ray Burton was there that night, best I recall. Cliff Burton's dad was there. And so it was cool, So and it was great that Rob Trujillo was there with his wife, and because his son's band Otto was the support act. So to me it was very Allegiant, right? It was bringing everybody together in the community to be part of it all, and that was great. As far as Bass Warrior goes, that's Andy Martingelli, who is the musical director for Ellefson Soto, for my solo stuff that I do. He helps put the band together, and we go over there for a month, and we play. We obviously play a few Megadeth things that I'm known for, but I go for these deep cuts. Kind of like I've been doing with Kings of Thrash.
okay.
It's excuse me, it's not just about going out and playing the hits. It's we do some of that too, but it's go down into the real bass centric
Yeah.
tracks, and stuff that I was part of composing, and all that kind of stuff. So there's that. Obviously, we tip our hand to some of our heroes, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, some of the guys that we grew up on. So it's a fun night out. It's they're smaller venues. It's an intimate night, so people can be up close and personal. And it's just interesting how music translates through all those languages and all those territories over there. And
100%. And I mean, I know that there's a killer VIP opportunity for if fans want to go into that, signed photos and meet and greet and signed items and pics and
stage use bases. I'm going to have some Bass Warrior coffee, so we got all kinds of good stuff over there. there. It's kind of, it's the, the house of Ellison, of my world,
Yeah.
music, coffee, and hanging out and rock and roll, and that's yeah, it's meant to be a fun night out.
There's so much going on, that you've been a part of between Altitudes and Attitude, Kings of Thrash, Metal Legions. What else do you have musically for 2025 for us?
Well, I got some stuff coming down the pike. Like I said, I can't quite tip my hand to it yet. You'll hear about it soon. Some stuff that we've been working on for the last year. So super excited about it. And
Now, earlier you said it takes about a year for an album. So, or is it an album that you're talking about, or?
yeah. It's an album. And
Cool,
we
cool.
started it, I think we started it in April of 24.
Yeah.
God, we might have even started it before that. Yeah, this one might almost be 2 years in the works. To be honest with you, it's been, because we start, sometimes you send a few files and then you get in the room, and I like to be in the room as much as possible, at least to sort of get put the cake together. You know what I mean? If
Yeah,
you
the
got to do
energy and the vibe. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
some of the other tasty bits and remotely you do what you do, you know what I mean? But I like that we have the option to do both. We've got a couple places we could meet to do the recordings, and then if we need to do some of the overdubs and that, we can do that, from remotely from people's places around the world, which is super great. You get, it really widens the scope of the people you get to work with now that we can work in a global manner. And that's one of the gifts of COVID. I mean, I think it forced everybody to, everybody's calling Sweetwater and, became podcasters or said, shit, I need to get some gear so I can record at my
Exactly.
house. You know what I mean? So it's one of the benefits.
Yeah, between podcasting and home studios, they made out like a bandit.
Exactly. Yeah.
Leah, you're also on Marina V, amazing tune with Symphony and Metal,
Yeah.
Bass Warriors tour, the Coffee. David Ellefson has a big 2025, as seems like you always do, man. So David, it's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to the upcoming announcement of what you have planned for us, and yeah, man, hopefully we catch you down the road.
Cool. Thank you much.
Ron,
See you
dude,
soon.
thank you so much.
See ya.
Yes,
Bye.
sir. Bye bye.